My sister bragged about her newly bought house while laughing at me for still renting a crappy apartment, so I showed her pictures of my new place, one that was worth 3 of her houses combined. Everything seemed like a normal dinner until my sister arrived. Natalie swept through the front door with her husband Tyler and their 2 kids trailing behind her. She wore designer sunglasses despite the November clouds and carried shopping bags from stores I recognized from their logos alone. Her children, Emma and Lucas, immediately ran to find their cousins, while Tyler shook hands with my father. "Sorry we're late," Natalie announced, though she didn't sound sorry at all. "We had to meet with our real estate agent this morning. Final walkthrough on our new house." My mother's face lit up with genuine excitement. "You closed on the house?" "That's wonderful news. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, completely updated kitchen," Natalie said, accepting a glass of wine from my Aunt Patricia. "The backyard is almost a quarter acre. Tyler's already planning where to put the pool." "Congratulations," filled the room. My father asked about the neighborhood. Patricia wanted to know about the school district. Everyone gathered around as Natalie pulled out her phone to show photos of granite countertops and hardwood floors. I stayed quiet in the corner, sipping my own wine and watching the performance unfold. This was typical Natalie behavior, something I'd witnessed countless times growing up. She always needed to be the center of attention, the one with the biggest news and the most impressive accomplishments. "The mortgage approval process was insane," Tyler added, settling into the leather armchair near the fireplace. "But we finally qualified for the loan. Market rates aren't great right now, but we couldn't pass up this opportunity." Natalie turned toward me, then her smile sharp and calculated. "Speaking of houses, how's that apartment of yours? Still renting that place downtown?" The room went silent. My mother shot Natalie a warning look, but my sister ignored it completely. "What was it you called it last year?" Natalie continued, tapping her chin in mock thought. "Your cozy little rental. I remember you said the neighbors were loud and the parking was terrible." "The apartment was fine," I replied evenly, setting down my wine glass. "Was." My father caught the past tense immediately. "I sold it 3 years ago." Natalie's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "You sold a rental? Don't you mean you moved out?" "No, I mean, I sold the property I owned." I met her gaze steadily. "I purchased a house after that." Tyler laughed outright, the sound booming across the living room. "You bought a house on your salary? Come on, be serious." I worked as a senior graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm. My income was comfortable but not extraordinary. To someone like Tyler, who worked in finance and constantly discussed money, my career probably seemed modest at best. "I'm completely serious," I said calmly. Natalie exchanged a glance with her husband, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Where exactly is this house? I don't remember you mentioning anything about moving." "Because you never asked." The words came out sharper than I intended, but they were true. In the 3 years since I'd moved, Natalie had never inquired about my living situation. She'd simply assumed I was still struggling in that cramped apartment she loved to criticize. "Well, humorous then," Tyler said, leaning back with a smirk. "What neighborhood did you manage to afford?" My mother intervened before I could respond. "Why don't we all sit down for dinner? Everything's getting cold." But Natalie wasn't ready to drop the subject. She pulled out her phone again, this time opening the Zillow app. "What's the address? I'd love to see what kind of place you found in your price range." Something inside me snapped. Years of subtle jabs and backhanded compliments, decades of being compared unfavorably to my older sister. All the times she'd made me feel small and insufficient came rushing back. I pulled out my own phone and opened Zillow myself. My fingers moved quickly across the screen as I typed in my address. The listing loaded immediately, complete with professional photos of the exterior and property details. "Here," I said, turning the screen toward Natalie. Her eyes scanned the listing. I watched her expression shift from amusement to confusion to complete shock. The wine glass in her hand tilted dangerously before she caught herself and set it down. "This can't be right," she muttered, zooming in on the details. Tyler leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the screen. His face went pale. "That estimate says $1.2 million. The room erupted. My mother gasped. Patricia dropped her fork. My father stood up from his chair so quickly it nearly toppled backward. "Let me see that," he said, reaching for my phone. I handed it over and watched as he scrolled through the listing. The photo showed a beautifully restored Victorian home with original hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a chef's kitchen with marble countertops, and a master suite that occupied the entire 3rd floor. The backyard featured mature landscaping and a stone patio, perfect for entertaining. "This is your house?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every square foot of it," Natalie grabbed my phone from our father's hands, her fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled faster. How did you afford this? Even with a good salary, the down payment alone would be. I had help with the down payment, I admitted. Remember Grandma Louise? My father's eyes widened. The inheritance. When my grandmother passed away 7 years ago, she left each of her grandchildren a sum of money. Natalie had used hers immediately buying a luxury car and funding an elaborate European vacation. I'd been more strategic. I invested most of the money and waited for the right opportunity. The condo I bought downtown was undervalued, I explained. I renovated it myself during evenings and weekends. Nothing major, just cosmetic updates that made a significant difference. When the market shifted, I sold it for twice what I paid. Tyler's jaw clenched. That kind of return is impossible. Not if you buy at the right time and know what improvements add value. I took my phone back from Natalie's stunned grip. I used the profit as a down payment on this house. It needed work when I bought it, but the bones were solid. I've been fixing it up gradually. Natalie finally found her voice. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why keep it a secret? The question hung in the air. Everyone stared at me, waiting for an answer. I could have lied. I could have made up some excuse about privacy or humility. Instead, I chose honesty. Because you never cared enough to ask about my life unless it gave you an opportunity to feel superior. The words landed like a physical blow. Natalie recoiled as if I'd slapped her. My mother made a small sound of distress. That's not fair, Natalie protested weakly. Isn't it? I turned to address the whole room now. Every family gathering for the past decade has followed the same pattern. Natalie arrives with some announcement about her latest purchase or achievement. Everyone celebrates. Then she turns to me and makes some comment about my failures or limitations. Tyler stood up defensive. You're being dramatic. Am I? Let's review just this year. At Easter, she asked if I was still driving my embarrassing 10-year-old sedan. At Dad's birthday in June, she wondered aloud if I'd ever be able to afford a real vacation instead of my weekend camping trips. And today she called my former apartment crappy before even asking if I still live there. Silence filled the dining room. Even the children had gone quiet, sensing the tension from the other room where they played. My father cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all take a breath and, no, let her talk. Natalie interrupted, her voice icy. Clearly she's been holding on to these grudges for years. Might as well air everything out now. I shook my head. They're not grudges. They're observations about how you treat me. You've spent our entire adult lives making sure everyone knows you're more successful, more put together, more accomplished than me. Maybe because I worked harder, Natalie shot back. I didn't waste my 20s on some creative career with no stability. I made smart choices like marrying Tyler for his finance job instead of actual love. The room gasped. Tyler's face turned crimson. Natalie stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. How dare you, she hissed. I probably should have stopped there. The mature thing would have been to apologize and diffuse the situation. But 3 years of secretly living in my dream home while being treated like a failure had built up a reservoir of resentment I could no longer contain. I dare because I'm tired of pretending, I said. I'm tired of letting you diminish my accomplishments. I'm tired of being the unsuccessful little sister in your narrative when the truth is I've been doing just fine. My mother tried to intervene again. Both of you need to calm down. This is Thanksgiving, for heaven's sake. But Natalie wasn't finished. So what, you bought an expensive house? That doesn't make you better than me. I never said it did. That's the difference between us, Natalie. I don't measure my worth by making you feel inferior. You're the one who needs constant validation at my expense. Tyler put his hand on Natalie's shoulder, trying to guide her back to her seat, but she shrugged him off. Her face had gone from pale to flushed, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the emotions underneath. You want to know the real reason I never told you about the house? I continued, my voice softer now, but no less firm. Because I knew you'd find a way to diminish it. You'd criticize the neighborhood or the age of a building or something about my decorating choices. You can't stand the idea that I might have something nice without your approval. Tears welled up in Natalie's eyes, but I couldn't tell if they came from hurt or rage. That's not true. Then prove me wrong. Tell me about one thing in my life you've celebrated without adding a caveat or comparison to your own achievements. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The second stretched out uncomfortably. Tyler looked away. Patricia pretended to be very interested in her napkin. My father finally broke the silence. I think perhaps we should table this discussion for now. Everyone's emotional and we're saying things we might regret. He was right. Of course, the damage was already done, But continuing would only make things worse. I nodded and set my phone on the side table. "I'm going to step outside for some air," I announced. Nobody tried to stop me. I grabbed my coat from the rack near the door and walked out onto the front porch. The November chill bit through my sweater, but the cold felt cleansing after the heated atmosphere inside. I'd lived in my house for 3 years. 3 years of coming home to crown molding and original stained glass windows. 3 years of hosting intimate dinner parties for actual friends who appreciated my success. 3 years of building equity and creating a space that felt completely mine. The front door opened behind me. I expected my mother ready to mediate and smooth things over like she always did. Instead, my father stepped out and closed the door quietly behind him. I could hear muffled voices from inside. Natalie's tone carried through the walls, high-pitched and agitated. Tyler's deeper voice responded with something I couldn't make out. The children's laughter had resumed, blissfully unaware of the adult complications unfolding around them. "That was quite a revelation in there," he said, leaning against the porch railing beside me. "I probably should have handled it differently." "Probably." He smiled slightly. "But I can't say I blame you. Your sister has always had a way of making everything about her." I looked at him in surprise. My father rarely criticized either of his daughters openly. Growing up, he'd been the peacekeeper, the one who stayed neutral during our childhood squabbles. Hearing him acknowledge Natalie's behavior felt validating in a way I hadn't anticipated. "You noticed?" I asked quietly. "Of course I noticed. Your mother and I both did." He pulled his jacket tighter against the wind. "We saw it starting when you were teenagers. Natalie would get an A on a test, but she couldn't just be happy about it. She'd find out your grade and make sure everyone knew hers was higher." The memories came flooding back. Science fair projects where Natalie's volcano won first place and she spent weeks reminding me that my solar system model only got third. Dance recital where she landed the lead role and somehow made my position in the chorus feel like a failure. Report cards, sports achievements, college acceptances, every milestone became a competition I didn't realize I was entered in. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. I admitted that it was normal sibling rivalry. My father shook his head slowly. "There's rivalry, and then there's the constant need to diminish someone else's accomplishments. What Natalie did crossed that line years ago. Why didn't you say something? Why let it continue?" He was quiet for a long moment, his breath forming small clouds in the November air. "Because we didn't know how. Every time we tried to address it, Natalie would get defensive, or your mother would worry we were damaging her self-esteem. We told ourselves she was just going through a phase that maturity would fix it. It didn't fix it, it got worse." I know the regret in his voice was palpable. "When you were in college, you used to call home every week. You'd tell us about your classes, your friends, the projects you were working on. You were excited about life. Then gradually the calls became shorter, less frequent. You stopped sharing as much. I'd forgotten about those calls. Senior year of college, I'd been bursting with ideas and energy. I'd landed an internship at a prestigious design firm. My portfolio was getting attention. Everything felt possible. Then Natalie graduated business school and immediately got hired at a Fortune 500 company. Suddenly, my internship seemed insignificant. My excitement felt childish compared to her real-world success. The shine dimmed on everything I'd accomplished. I stopped calling because it hurt too much, I said. Every conversation somehow circled back to Natalie's achievements. I'd mention my internship, and Mom would say how proud she was, but then she'd spend 20 minutes talking about Natalie's salary and benefits package. I started to feel like my wins didn't count. My father winced. "Your mother didn't mean it that way. She was excited for both of you. I know she didn't mean it, but intent doesn't erase impact." I wrapped my arms around myself. "Do you know what it's like to constantly feel like you're not enough? To measure every success against an impossible standard? Is that why you kept the house a secret, to avoid the comparison? Partly, but also because I needed something that was completely mine, something Natalie couldn't touch or minimize or overshadow." I met his eyes. I needed to prove to myself that I could build something significant without anyone's validation. And you did. You built something remarkable. He gestured toward the house behind us. But keeping it secret also meant you carried the weight of Natalie's judgments without defending yourself. That must have been exhausting. It had been exhausting. 3 years of family gatherings where I bit my tongue. 3 years of letting Natalie's comments slide. 3 years of being underestimated while sitting on proof of my success. There were so many times I almost told her. I confessed. Last Christmas, when she made that crack about my starter career, I wanted to show her photos of the house. Or this past summer when she questioned whether I'd ever be financially stable. I almost brought it up, but something always stopped me. What changed today? I thought about the moment in the living room when Natalie had called my old apartment crappy. The casual cruelty of it delivered in front of everyone. The assumption that I was still exactly where she'd left me in her mind, struggling lesser behind. I think I finally got tired of being small, I said. Tired of making myself smaller to accommodate her ego. She didn't even ask if I still lived there. She just assumed, and that assumption felt like everything that's wrong between us condensed into one question. The door creaked open again. Patricia poked her head out, concern etched on her face. "Everything okay out here?" "Your mother's worried." "We're fine," my father assured her. "Just getting some air. We'll be in shortly." Patricia nodded and retreated back inside. Through the window, I could see Natalie pacing in the dining room while Tyler tried to calm her down. My mother was clearing plates with jerky, anxious movements. The perfect Thanksgiving had completely derailed. "Do you regret telling her?" my father asked. I considered the question carefully. The moment had been explosive and uncomfortable. The fallout would likely last weeks or months. But something in me felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a heavy bag I could finally set down. "No," I said finally. "I regret how it came out. Maybe I could have been gentler, but I don't regret the truth being known." "Good, because you have nothing to apologize for." He straightened up from the railing. "Your sister needed to hear what you said. Whether she can accept it and grow from it, that's up to her now." We stood together watching the bare trees sway in the wind. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant sound of someone's television and leaves skittering across driveways. It was the kind of peaceful autumn evening I'd always loved, when the world felt still and manageable. "Your house," my father said after a while. "The renovation work you did you enjoy it?" The question surprised me with its simplicity. I loved it. Every weekend spent stripping wallpaper or refinishing floors felt like meditation, like I was building something permanent with my own hands. Your grandfather would have been proud. He was the same way, always tinkering, always fixing things himself. A fond smile crossed his face. "He built that deck on their old house board by board. Your grandmother thought he was crazy for not hiring contractors, but he insisted on doing it himself. I remember that deck. We had barbecues there every summer. Solid construction. Lasted 30 years before they finally replaced it." He glanced at me sideways. "You've got that same stubborn independence that need to prove you can do things yourself." Is that a compliment or criticism? Compliment definitely, but it can be lonely, can't it? Doing everything solo. He'd hit on something I rarely admitted even to myself. The house renovations had been fulfilling but isolating. Weekends spent alone with power tools and YouTube tutorials. Evenings researching building codes and tile patterns. I told a few close friends about the house, but mostly I kept my head down and worked. Sometimes lonely, I conceded, but also empowering. Every challenge I solved myself added to my confidence. "I understand that I do." He put his hand on my shoulder. "But you don't always have to do things alone. You have people who want to support you, even if we haven't always shown it well." The offer touched me more than I expected. "I'll remember that when you have your housewarming party, and you should have one. Your mother and I want to be there. We want to see what you've built and celebrate it properly. What about Natalie? What about her? This is your achievement. You get to decide who shares in it." He squeezed my shoulder gently. "But for what it's worth, I think eventually she'll want to be part of it too. Once she works through her initial shock and bruised ego." "You're more optimistic than I am. I know my daughters better than you might think. Natalie is competitive and sometimes thoughtless, but she's not cruel. Not deep down. This revelation will force her to look at herself honestly, and that's uncomfortable, but necessary." Inside, I could see my mother had finally given up on salvaging dinner as a formal affair. She was packing leftovers into containers while Patricia helped. Natalie had stopped pacing and now sat slumped in a chair, her perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. Tyler stood by the window staring out at nothing. "We should probably go back in," I said reluctantly. "One more thing before we do." My father turned to face me fully. "I'm sorry we didn't protect you from this dynamic sooner. I'm sorry we let Natalie's behavior become normalized. And I'm sorry you felt like you couldn't share your success with your own family." Tears pricked at my eyes unexpectedly. "Dad, let me finish. You are talented, hardworking, and impressive in ways that have nothing to do with real estate or money. The house is wonderful and you should be proud of it. But you should also be proud of the person you are. Someone who doesn't need to put others down to feel elevated. That's a far more valuable quality than any property value." I hugged him. then something I hadn't done spontaneously in years. He held me tight, and for a moment I felt like a kid again, safe and protected from the complicated world of adult relationships and sibling dynamics. "Thanks for having my back," I whispered. "Always, even when I'm not good at showing it." We went back inside together, presenting a united front. The atmosphere in this dining room was still tense, but less explosive. Natalie looked up when we entered, her eyes meeting mine briefly before darting away. My mother rushed over, relief evident on her face. "There you are." I was starting to worry. "We're fine, Mom, just talking." Patricia had wisely decided to collect her things. "I should probably head out, let you all have some family time." Nobody protested. She made her rounds of goodbyes, hugging everyone, and whispering something to my mother that made her nod gratefully. After Patricia left, the remaining 6 of us stood awkwardly in the living room. Emma appeared in the doorway holding one of her dolls. "Mommy, when are we having dessert?" "We're not staying for dessert, sweetie," Natalie said, her voice carefully controlled. "We need to get going." "But Grandma made pie," Lucas protested, running up behind his sister. "My mother seized on this. You can't leave without pie. I made your favorite pumpkin with real whipped cream." "Mom, we really should," Natalie began. "Just pie," my mother insisted, a pleading note in her voice. 15 minutes, please," he continued. "Your mother and I noticed it years ago, but we didn't know how to address it without seeming like we were playing favorites. We thought maybe she'd grow out of it. She didn't. No, she didn't." He sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. "I'm proud of what you've accomplished. The house, your career, the way you've managed your finances. You did all of that on your own without broadcasting it or seeking constant praise." His words surprised me more than Natalie's shocked reaction had. My father wasn't typically demonstrative with his emotions or compliments. "I wish I'd known," he added. "About the house, I mean. I would have loved to help with the renovations. I thought about telling you, I admitted, but I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it alone." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." He put his arm around my shoulders briefly. "Though I have to ask, why reveal it now? Why not just let Natalie think whatever she wanted to think? I've been asking myself the same question since the words left my mouth. I guess I reached my limit. There's only so many times you can let someone belittle you before you feel compelled to set the record straight." We stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Through the window, I could see my mother attempting to salvage dinner, while Natalie sat rigid in her chair, Tyler speaking quietly in her ear. Patricia was entertaining the kids, trying to keep them distracted from the adult drama. "What do you think happens now?" I asked my father. "Honestly, I think your sister's going to need some time to process this. She's built her identity around being the successful one, the responsible one. Finding out you've been quietly surpassing her achievements challenges that self-image. I wasn't trying to compete with her. I know, but she might not see it that way yet." He turned to face me directly. "The question is, what do you want to happen now?" I considered this carefully. Despite everything, Natalie was still my sister. We'd shared a childhood, had inside jokes, knew each other's histories. The relationship was complicated and often painful, but it existed. "I want her to see me as an equal," I said finally. "Not as someone to compete with or condescend to, just as her sister, who has her own life and her own successes." "That's reasonable. It might take a while for her to get there, though." The door opened again, and this time my mother did appear. Her face showed the strain of the afternoon's events. "Dinner's ready," she said quietly. "If you two want to come back inside." My father squeezed my shoulder once more before heading in. I started to follow, but my mother caught my arm. "What you said in there," she began, then paused. "Was it all true about feeling like Natalie's been putting you down?" "Yes." She closed her eyes briefly, pain crossing her features. "I should have noticed. I should have said something. It's not your fault, Mom. This is between Natalie and me. Still, I'm your mother. I should have protected you from that kind of treatment, even from your own sister." She hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." We went back inside together. The dining table looked beautiful with my mother's best china and autumn centerpiece, but the atmosphere remained strained. Everyone took their seats quietly. Natalie wouldn't meet my eyes. She pushed food around her plate without eating much. Tyler made awkward small talk with my father about football. The children sensed something was wrong and behaved with unusual restraint. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The satisfaction I felt at seeing Natalie's shocked expression had faded, replaced by a hollow feeling in my chest. I'd made my point, but at what cost? After dinner, people began making excuses to leave early. Natalie was the first to gather her kids and head for the door. Tyler carried their coats while she collected scattered toys and tablets. Before she could reach for her purse, my mother intercepted her with a container of leftovers. At least take some turkey home and stuffing. You barely ate anything. Natalie accepted the container mechanically. Thanks, Mom. The children were already by the car, Emma complaining about wanting to finish her game, and Lucas asking if they could stop for ice cream on the way home. Normal kid concerns, blissfully unaware of the adult tension swirling around them. We should probably get going, she announced to the room at large, still not looking at me directly. Long drive home. My mother tried to convince them to stay for dessert, but Natalie was adamant. As she ushered Emma and Lucas toward the car, I made a split-second decision. Natalie, wait. She stopped on the front walkway but didn't turn around. Tyler continued to the car with the kids giving us space. I shouldn't have brought up your marriage, I said. That was out of line. She finally looked at me, then her eyes red-rimmed. Do you really think I married Tyler for money? I don't know. I answered honestly. I don't know much about your marriage because we don't really talk about real things anymore. We just perform for each other. Whose fault is that? The question came out defensive, but I could hear the hurt underneath. Both of ours, probably, but it started somewhere, and I think it started with competition, with you needing to be better, and me feeling like I could never measure up. Natalie wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. I didn't realize I was making you feel that way. Maybe you didn't realize it consciously, but the pattern's been there for years. She was quiet for a long moment, watching Tyler buckle the kids into their car seats. I saw Grandma Louise's inheritance as fun money, something to enjoy before real life set in. I didn't think strategically like you did. There's nothing wrong with how you spent it, except I have nothing to show for it now, and you have a house worth over $1 million. She laughed bitterly. Do you know how that makes me feel? The question hung in the cold air between us. I could give her the easy answer, the one that would smooth everything over. Or I could give her honesty, which she might not want to hear, but probably needed. I can imagine, I said carefully. But your feelings about my choices aren't really about me, are they? They're about your own regrets. Natalie flinched slightly but didn't argue. Maybe. I don't know anymore. Everything I thought I knew about our lives, about who is succeeding and who is struggling, got flipped upside down in there. A car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating us before disappearing down the street. In the distance, someone's dog barked. The ordinary sounds of suburban evening continued despite our extraordinary conversation. I never thought of us as being in competition, I said. Not consciously, anyway. I was just living my life, making choices that felt right for me. The house was never about beating you or proving anything to you specifically, but you must have felt some satisfaction today, watching my face when I saw that listing. She finally looked at me directly, seeing my whole perception of you shatter. I couldn't deny it completely. There had been a moment of vindication, a surge of satisfaction at finally being seen. But it had faded quickly, replaced by something more complicated. For about 30 seconds, yes, it felt good to prove you wrong. I met her gaze steadily, but then I saw how hurt you were, and it stopped feeling like a victory. We're sisters, Natalie. Your pain doesn't actually make me happy, even after years of me making you feel small. Even then, she wrapped her arms tighter around herself, shivering despite her expensive coat. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know where to start. Maybe by stopping the comparisons. By asking about my life, instead of assuming you already know the answers. By celebrating my wins without measuring them against your own. That sounds simple when you say it like that. Simple doesn't mean easy. I stepped closer to her. Look, I'm not expecting you to transform overnight, but I need you to try. I need you to see me as a whole person, not just a supporting character in your life story. Natalie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I really thought I was doing everything right. Following all the rules, checking all the boxes, the right schools, the right career path, the right marriage timeline, and here you were just living authentically, and it worked out better. Your life isn't a failure just because mine turned out differently than you expected. Isn't it, Bill? Her voice cracked slightly. We're drowning in debt from the new house. Tyler's job is less secure than we admit to anyone. Emma's anxiety is getting worse, and we can barely afford the therapy she needs. Meanwhile, you're sitting pretty in a fully paid-off mansion. It's not paid off, I interrupted gently. I have a mortgage, a significant one. The difference is, I bought within my means and built equity slowly instead of stretching for something I couldn't afford. She stared at me. You have a mortgage on a $1 million house. Did you think I paid cash? Natalie, I'm a graphic designer, not a tech CEO. I made smart decisions and got lucky with timing, But I'm not wealthy. I'm just financially stable. This seemed to penetrate her spiral of self-comparison. Some of the tension left her shoulders. So you're not perfect either. Never claimed to be. I've made plenty of mistakes, dated the wrong people, took jobs that went nowhere, made investment choices I regretted. You just never asked about any of it because you were too busy assuming I was failing. The truth of that statement settled between us. From the car, Lucas called out asking when they were leaving. Tyler's silhouette was visible in the driver's seat, diplomatically giving us space but clearly ready to depart. I should go, Natalie said, but she didn't move immediately. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why now? Why keep it secret for 3 years and then reveal it today? Specifically, I've been asking myself the same question since the words left my mouth in the living room. Because I reached my limit. There's only so many times you can let someone belittle you before you feel compelled to set the record straight. Like I made you feel that way today with the apartment comment that was just the final straw. It's been building for a long time. I shoved my hands in my pockets against the cold. Every family gathering where you found a way to point out my perceived shortcomings. Every achievement of yours that came with an implicit comparison to my failures, it accumulated, and today it finally overflowed. Natalie nodded, slowly processing this. I'm sorry. I know I've already said that, but I mean it. I've been a terrible sister. You haven't been terrible. You've been thoughtless and competitive. But terrible would mean you didn't care at all. And I don't think that's true. No, it's not. She wiped at her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her makeup further. I do care. I've just been so wrapped up in my own insecurities that I couldn't see past them to notice I was hurting you. Tyler honked the horn lightly, a gentle reminder. Emma and Lucas were probably getting restless, and the drive home would take over an hour. I really do need to go now, Natalie said. But can I see it sometime? The house? Not to judge or compare, just to see what my sister's accomplished for real this time? You want to visit? I want to see what my sister's accomplished. For real this time, not to compare or criticize. She hesitated. If you let me. Something loosened in my chest. This wasn't a complete resolution. Years of damaged relationship couldn't be fixed with one conversation, but it felt like a genuine beginning. I'd like that, I said. Maybe next weekend I'll make brunch. That sounds nice? Natalie glanced back at the car where Tyler was waiting. I should go. The kids are getting restless. Drive safe. She started to walk away, then turned back impulsively and hugged me. It was brief and awkward, but it was real. I really am proud of you, she whispered. I'm sorry I never said it before. Then she was gone, hurrying to the car before the moment could become too emotional. I watched them drive away before heading back inside. The rest of the evening passed more peacefully. My parents and I cleaned up together while Patricia shared stories about her latest cruise. The tension from earlier had dissipated, leaving behind a cautious optimism. As I drove home later that night, I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment looking at my house. The porch light illuminated the recently painted trim. Through the windows, I could see the warm glow of the lamps I'd left on. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Thank you for being honest today. I needed to hear it even though it hurt. I typed back, thank you for listening. See you next weekend. Inside my house, I made tea and curled up on the sofa. I'd reupholstered myself. The radiators clanked comfortingly as heat spread through the old pipes. Every corner of this place held memories of the work I'd put in the vision I'd had for transforming it. I bought this house to prove something to myself, not to anyone else. The fact that Natalie now knew about it didn't change its fundamental meaning in my life. It was still my sanctuary, my achievement, my home. But maybe her knowing did change one thing. Maybe it opened the door to a different kind of relationship with my sister, one built on mutual respect rather than unspoken competition. Whether we could walk through that door remained to be seen. The following weekend, Natalie arrived alone. Tyler had taken the kids to visit his parents, giving us time to talk without distractions. I gave her the full tour, watching her face as she took in each carefully restored detail. You did all this yourself? She asked, running her hand along the original banister I'd refinished. Most of it. I hired out the major plumbing and electrical work, but everything else was me. We ended up in the kitchen, where I prepared French toast and fresh fruit. As we ate, conversation came easier than it had in years. We talked about real things, her struggles with Emma's anxiety, my challenges at work, the complexities of adult life that neither of us had anticipated. I spent so much energy trying to look perfect, Natalie admitted over coffee, that I forgot to actually be happy. Tyler and I are in counseling now. Turns out buying a house we can barely afford wasn't great for our marriage. I'm sorry you're going through that. Don't be. It's forcing us to have conversations we should have had years ago. She smiled ruefully. Turns out your comment about why I married him hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. I need to figure out what I actually want versus what I think I should want. We talked until early afternoon. When she finally left, she hugged me again longer this time. Same time next month, she asked. I'd like that. As I watched her drive away, I felt something shift. The house around me was still beautiful, still valuable, still mine. But now it represented something beyond personal achievement. It had become the catalyst for honesty, the backdrop for rebuilding a relationship I thought might be broken beyond repair. I never set out to show up my sister. I'd simply lived my life quietly, making choices that felt right for me. But sometimes the truth needs to come to light not to hurt, but to heal. Sometimes people need to see us clearly, even if it shatters their preconceptions. The house was worth $1.2 million according to Zillow, but the look on Natalie's face when she finally saw me as an equal, that was priceless.